All right. Here's some points I'm going to make here. Now, I have information, key information, on Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, at one point, made an inquiry and wrote a letter to England to some doctors and to some professors. Thomas Jefferson had an issue in the 1700s that the historical world, or what you would call the scholarly world, was ignoring the North American Indians' culture in relations to the ancient tribes of Israel. Now the problem is he's seen the similarities of rites and rituals of the North American Indians. And it blew him away that the majority of these actions could not have been taught to them unless they were in Israel. Right? Now check this out. Not only did they find Hebrew in the North American Indians' burial grounds, right? One moment, let me pull this up here. Right? They looked at the Day of Atonement. Oh, I got it here. They looked at the Day of Atonement, and they looked at all the holy days that the Hebrews was following, and noticed that these holy days were actually biblical holy days out of the Bible, out of the Old Testament. And he was wondering, how can these people here in our modern time, at that time, be following ancient Hebrew customs? How did they get here? Right? Mm-hmm. Let me read this. I'm going to read this. And a matter of fact, this comes from a book with quotes from Thomas Jefferson. Okay? And these memoirs were written to Meriwether Lewis and William Clark in the late 1700s. Right?
Lewis and Clark.
And you can get this, excuse me, hello?
Yes, I'm here.
And you can get this information, Native Americans and the Lost Tribes of Israel. You can type that in, you can get that information, which they give quotes. And you can read this out of a book called by Alan Taylor, Alantaylor, that reads American Colonies, the Settlement of North America, page 33. Right? Now listen to some of these quotes.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Jefferson wrote a brief letter to Meriwether Lewis and William Clark in which he instructed them to acquire what knowledge you can of the state of morality, religion, and information among them, the Indians, as it may better enable those who endeavor to civilize and instruct them. So initially, Jefferson wrote a letter to them to say, I need some information, some background on them so that we can actually, control them, right?
So like the Septuagint.
Huh?
It sounds like the Septuagint again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now check this out. In addition, Jefferson shared, now we know that Jefferson was a top Mason. In addition, Jefferson shared a personal correspondence with his friend Meriwether Lewis, in which he expressed his hope that the trek west might provide evidence as to the whereabouts of the lost tribes of Israel. Right? Now, let me repeat that. Jefferson shared a personal correspondence with his friend Meriwether Lewis, in which he expressed his hope that the trek west might provide evidence as to the whereabouts of the lost tribes of Israel. Now that comes from a different book by Stephen Ambrosi, Undaunted Courage. Totally two separate sources, right?
Mm-hmm.
Listen to these quotes. Listen what they wrote back to him. Right? Though Lewis and Clark expedition never returned with any evidence, that's what they put in here, but we're going to see that in a second, to support the Native American lost tribe of Israel claim, the legend remained extremely popular throughout the early part of the 19th century, which means there was a conversation of the North American Indians being of the lost tribes around the 19th century, right? Ethan Smith, for example, who was not only a pastor to a small church in Vermont, but was also a self-proclaimed expert on Jew history, hoped to prove the Jewish roots of Native Americans by appealing to the Bible. In his 1825 book, View of the Hebrews, Smith endeavors to point out what he saw as similarities between Native American religious customs and the ancient Judaism, as Smith states. Listen to what Smith stated when researching on the request from Thomas Jefferson. Listen. In all their rites which I have learned of them, there is certainly a most striking similitude to the Mosaic rituals. Their Feast of First Fruits, Feast of Ingathering, Day of Atonement, peace offerings, sacrifices, the build an altar of stone before a tent covered with blankets. Within the tent, don't forget that it's also the Feast of Tabernacles. Mm-hmm. Within the tent, they burn tobacco for incense and fire taken from the altar of burnt offering. All who have seen a dead human body are considered unclean 8 days, which time they are excluded from the congregation. Now, when you go into the unclean law, it speaks clearly about separating if you're unclean and then come before the priest on the 8th day. Mm-hmm. How can these people be following the Mosaic Levitical law and not have no connection to the children of Israel? Now listen to what Smith said in the 1800s. For Smith, this was ample proof of God's biblical prophecy that he, God, shall set up an ensign for the nations and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth.